The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the Montana blizzard, each swipe revealing nothing but white fury for the briefest moment before the snow reclaimed the glass.
Hang on, I'm coming.
Owen Carter gripped the steering wheel with both hands, his knuckles pale in the dashboard's dim glow, while his 8-year-old daughter Penny hummed softly in the back seat, her voice a fragile thread of normalcy in the chaos. Scout, their golden retriever, pressed his nose against the rear window, his breath fogging the glass as he watched the world disappear into the storm. The truck crawled forward at 15 miles per hour, its headlights carving weak tunnels through the whiteout that seemed to close behind them like a living thing. Owen had driven through plenty of Montana winters, but this storm felt different, felt hungry, as if the mountain itself had decided to swallow everything in its path. "Daddy, are we almost home?" Penny's voice carried that particular note of forced bravery that children adopt when they're trying not to show fear. Owen caught her eyes in the rearview mirror, wide and trusting despite the violent shaking of the truck as wind gusts slammed into them from the north. He forced a smile that he hoped looked more confident than he felt. 20 more minutes, sweetheart. Scout's keeping watch, aren't you, boy? The golden retriever's tail thumped once against the seat, but his attention remained fixed on something outside, his entire body suddenly rigid with alertness. Before Owen could process the dog's behavior, Scout erupted into motion, barking with an urgency that made Penny jump. The retriever launched himself over the seats toward the driver's side door, his 70 pounds of muscle and determination nearly causing Owen to lose control of the wheel. "Scout, down." "What the hell?" But the dog was already pawing frantically at the door handle, whining with a desperation Owen had never heard from him before. Through the storm's howling came another sound, barely audible but unmistakably there. A metallic groaning that didn't belong to the wind. Owen's foot found the brake, the truck sliding slightly before coming to a stop. Scout's barking intensified, his whole body trembling with the need to get outside. "Stay in the truck, Penny. Lock the doors behind me." Owen pulled on his coat and opened the door, immediately regretting it as the wind hit him like a frozen sledgehammer. Scout shot past him into the white void, disappearing instantly. Owen stumbled after him, shouting the dog's name into the wind that threw his words back at him like ice pellets. 10 feet from the truck, he could barely see its taillights anymore. 20 feet, and he was alone in a world of white and gray, following Scout's barking like a lifeline. His boots sank deep with each step, the snow already past his knees, and he wondered with a sick feeling if he'd be able to find his way back. Then he saw it, a dark shape against the snow, metal twisted and wrong. A car, or what remained of one, its front end wrapped around a massive pine tree like a grotesque embrace. The driver's door hung open, creaking in the wind, and Scout was already there, digging frantically at something half buried in a drift. Owen stumbled closer and felt his heart stop. A woman, her dark hair frozen into crystalline strands, lay motionless in the snow. Her coat was torn, dark stains spreading across the fabric that Owen's mind refused to identify as blood. Scout was licking her face, whimpering, his tail tucked low. Owen dropped to his knees beside her, pulling off his glove to feel for a pulse at her neck. Her skin was like ice, but there, faint as a whisper, he felt it. She was alive. "Help me, Scout." Together, man and dog worked to free her from the snow's grip. She was small, maybe 5'4", but dead weight in Owen's arms as he lifted her. That's when he saw it, clutched in her frozen fingers like she'd been holding onto it even as consciousness fled. A detective's badge, the metal still somehow catching light despite the storm. Rachel Brooks, Montana State Police. Owen's mind raced as he struggled back toward where he hoped the truck waited. A detective, out here, crashed in a storm that no one should have been driving in. He glanced back at the wrecked car once more and noticed something that made his blood run colder than the wind. Tire tracks, barely visible but there, leading away from the scene. Another vehicle had been here, had left her here. Scout led them back, his golden form appearing and disappearing in the snow like a guardian spirit. Owen could hear Penny's frightened voice calling for them before he saw the truck's lights. He managed to get the back door open, laying the unconscious woman across the seat. "Daddy? Who is she? Is she okay?" Penny's questions tumbled over each other as Owen cranked the heat to maximum and grabbed the emergency blankets from under the seat. "She's hurt, baby. We need to get her to the hospital." Scout found her. The dog had already positioned himself on the floor, pressed against the woman as if trying to share what warmth he had. As Owen pulled back onto what he hoped was still the road, he couldn't shake the image of those tire tracks leading away. Someone had been there when she crashed, or maybe caused her to crash, and they'd left her to die in the storm. He pressed harder on the accelerator, fighting every instinct that told him to slow down in the blizzard. In the backseat, Penny had started singing again, soft and low, the same lullaby Lisa used to sing before the cancer took her. The woman's breathing was shallow, rattling. Through the rearview mirror, Owen saw headlights in the distance behind them, appearing for just a moment before the storm swallowed them whole. He told himself it was another traveler, someone else caught in the storm. But Scout's low growl, rumbling from deep in his chest as he watched those vanishing lights, suggested otherwise. The emergency room erupted into controlled chaos the moment Owen carried Rachel Brooks through the sliding doors. "Doctor?" Elena Martinez appeared as if summoned, her experienced eyes taking in the detective's condition in a single sweep before barking orders that sent nurses scurrying in all directions. Core temperatures dropped to 89 degrees. "Get warming blankets, heated IV fluids, cardiac monitoring, now." She guided Owen to lay Rachel on a gurney, her hands already checking pupils, pulse, breathing. How long was she out there? Owen shook his head, still catching his breath from the struggle through the hospital parking lot. "I don't know. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. My dog found her about 15 miles up Highway 2. Penny pressed against Owen's leg, Scout beside her, both of them watching as the medical team wheeled Rachel away into the depths of the hospital. "Doctor." Martinez paused at the doorway, her expression grave. "She's got severe hypothermia, possible concussion from the crash, and she's lost blood. Those wounds on her side, they're not all from the accident. Some of them look older, maybe a day or two. Did you see anyone else at the scene?" The question hung in the air like an accusation, though Owen couldn't say why it felt that way. "No, just tire tracks leading away. Someone was there and left." Martinez's jaw tightened. "I'll need to report this to the sheriff's department. You should prepare to answer questions." They waited in uncomfortable plastic chairs, the fluorescent lights harsh after the darkness of the storm. Penny had fallen asleep against Owen's shoulder, Scout's head resting on her feet. The waiting room was nearly empty. Just them, and an elderly couple, sharing worried whispers. Owen found himself staring at the badge he'd retrieved from Rachel's pocket before the nurses took her clothes. Detective Rachel Brooks. The photo showing a woman with sharp eyes and a determined set to her jaw. What had she been investigating that left her bleeding in a snowbank? The question gnawed at him like hunger. "Mr. Carter." The voice was deep, authoritative, and somehow familiar. Owen looked up to find Sheriff Tom Henderson standing over them, his substantial frame blocking the light. Henderson had been sheriff for 12 years, ran unopposed every election, and commanded the kind of respect that came from fear as much as admiration. His gray eyes were cold as the storm outside as they studied Owen. "Heard you found one of our detectives out on Highway 2. It wasn't a question." Owen nodded, careful not to wake Penny. "Scout found her, actually. She was buried in the snow next to her crashed car." Henderson's eyes narrowed slightly, a micro-expression that Owen might have missed if he hadn't been watching for it. "Scout. That's the dog?" His gaze shifted to the golden retriever, who had lifted his head to stare back. Something passed between animal and man. A moment of mutual assessment that ended when Scout's lips pulled back slightly. Not quite a snarl, but certainly not friendly. "Yes, sir." He led me right to her. "Lucky thing, too." Few more minutes, and Henderson cut him off with a raised hand. "Lucky." "Yes. Very lucky that you happened to be driving that particular stretch of road in the worst blizzard we've had in 5 years." The implication hung between them like a blade. Owen felt his jaw clench. "I was coming back from Great Falls with my daughter. Penny had a specialist appointment at the Children's Hospital. You can verify that easily enough." Henderson's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Oh, I will. I'll verify everything." See, Detective Brooks was working a sensitive case. Internal affairs type situation. Makes me wonder if her accident was really an accident, and if it wasn't, makes me wonder who might want her out of the way. Owen stood slowly, lifting Penny into his arms without waking her. "Are you suggesting I had something to do with this? I saved her life. Did you? Or did you make sure there were witnesses when you found her?" Henderson stepped closer, close enough that Owen could smell coffee and something sour on his breath. Scout rose to his feet, positioning himself between them, a low rumble building in his chest. The sheriff looked down at the dog with something like amusement. Protective, isn't he? Almost like he's got something to protect you from. Before Owen could respond, Dr. Martinez appeared in the doorway. "Sheriff Henderson. Mr. Carter." Detective Brooks is stable but still unconscious. She's lucky Mr. Carter found her when he did. Another hour, and we'd be having a very different conversation. Henderson's expression shifted to one of professional concern so quickly it was jarring. "Good to hear, Doctor. When can I speak with her?" Martinez shook her head. "Not for at least 48 hours, possibly longer. She's been through significant trauma. Her body needs time to recover." The sheriff nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving Owen's face. "Well then, Mr. Carter, I'll need you to come by the station tomorrow. Give a full statement. Every detail about finding her. Sometimes people remember things they didn't realize they saw. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Owen? I'd appreciate it if you didn't leave town for a few days. Just until we sort this all out. Owen watched him go, his heavy footsteps echoing down the hospital corridor. Scout's growling hadn't stopped until the sheriff turned the corner out of sight. Doctor. Martinez looked between Owen and the empty hallway, her expression troubled. Mr. Carter, can I speak with you privately for a moment? She glanced meaningfully at Penny, still sleeping in his arms. Owen settled his daughter on the chairs with his coat as a blanket. Scout immediately curling up beside her. He followed the doctor a few feet away, still keeping Penny in sight. Detective Brooks's injuries tell a story, Martinez said quietly. The crash injuries are obvious, but there are defensive wounds on her hands and arms. Bruising that's older. She's been in more than one fight recently. And there's something else. She hesitated, clearly debating how much to say. When we undressed her, we found documents sewn into the lining of her coat. I haven't read them, that's not my business. But someone who goes to those lengths is either paranoid or in real danger. She met Owen's eyes directly. That dog of yours might have saved more than just her life. He might have saved whatever she was trying to protect. Be careful, Mr. Carter. In my experience, Sheriff Henderson doesn't ask questions he doesn't already think he knows the answers to. 2 days passed in a blur of hospital visits, worried calls from concerned neighbors, and Owen trying to maintain normalcy for Penny while his mind churned with questions. On the third morning, as February's sun broke through the clouds for the first time since the storm, Owen received the call. Rachel Brooks was awake. He found her propped up in the hospital bed, her face still pale, but her eyes alert, studying him with a kind of intensity that probably made suspects confess without being asked. You're the one who found me, she said, her voice hoarse but steady. You and your dog. Scout found you, Owen corrected, setting down the coffee and muffins he'd brought. He knew you were there somehow. I just carried you. Rachel's expression softened slightly. Scout. I remember. Gold fur and warm breath when I thought I was dying. Is he? She stopped as Penny peeked around the doorframe, clutching a piece of paper. Owen sighed. I told you to wait in the hall, sweetheart. But Penny was already approaching the bed with the determination only an 8-year-old could muster. I made this for you, she said, offering the paper to Rachel. It was a crayon drawing of Scout, standing heroically in the snow, a small figure in blue beside him. That's you. Daddy says Scout saved you because that's what heroes do. Rachel took the drawing with hands that trembled slightly. Whether from weakness or emotion, Owen couldn't tell. This is beautiful. Thank you. Penny, the girl supplied, beaming. I'm Penny and that's my dad, Owen, and Scout is at home, because dogs can't come to hospitals, which is stupid because Scout is cleaner than most people. Rachel actually smiled, the expression transforming her face from suspicious detective to someone altogether more human. You're absolutely right, Penny. That is a stupid rule. She looked up at Owen. Thank you. Both of you. I understand you've been visiting every day. Seemed wrong to save someone's life and then just disappear, Owen said, then hesitated before adding, Sheriff Henderson's been by to see you? Rachel's expression shuddered immediately, the warmth vanishing. Briefly, I told him I don't remember much about the accident. Head trauma, you know. She touched the bandage around her head lightly. He seemed very concerned. The way she said concerned made it clear she meant the opposite. He also mentioned you've been very helpful, very cooperative. Even offered to let me stay somewhere safe while I recover, since my apartment is apparently being renovated for water damage I don't remember happening. Owen and Rachel locked eyes, a moment of understanding passing between them. Funny thing about that, Owen said carefully, we've got a spare room at our place. Quiet, good for recovery. Scout's excellent security, and Penny would love the company. She doesn't get much female influence since. He trailed off, the words since her mother died, sticking in his throat. Rachel studied him for a long moment. That's very generous, but I couldn't impose. I don't even know you. Penny, who had been quietly coloring in another corner of her drawing, looked up with eyes that were Lisa's, brown and earnest. Mommy always said we should help people who need help. And you need help. Your apartment has water damage. The innocent conviction in Penny's voice seemed to decide something for Rachel. When you put it that way, how can I refuse? She met Owen's eyes again. Just until I'm back on my feet. And I insist on paying rent. Owen shook his head. We'll discuss that when you're not in a hospital bed. Dr. Martinez says you can be discharged tomorrow if you have somewhere safe to go with someone to monitor you. Rachel nodded slowly, then looked down at Penny's drawing again. Your daughter's right. Scout is a hero. I think I owe him my life. The next afternoon, Owen pulled into his driveway with Rachel in the passenger seat, Penny chattering excitedly from the back about all the things she wanted to show their guest. The house sat on 5 acres outside Whitefish, a 2-story craftsman that Lisa had fallen in love with the moment she saw it. Scout burst through the dog door as soon as he heard the truck, circling it with tail wagging furiously. When Owen helped Rachel out, supporting her still weak legs, Scout immediately pressed against her other side, as if he understood his job wasn't finished yet. "It's beautiful," Rachel said, taking in the wraparound porch, the mountain views, the sense of peaceful isolation. "How long have you lived here?" Owen guided her up the porch steps, Scout padding alongside. 7 years. Since just after Penny was born, Lisa wanted somewhere to raise a family away from town noise. He pushed open the front door, warmth and the smell of the stew he'd left in the slow cooker greeting them. "Lisa, was your wife?" Rachel asked gently. Owen nodded, his throat tight. "Cancer. 2 years ago?" The words never got easier. The inside of the house was warm, lived in, but Rachel could see the subtle signs of absence. The coat hooks by the door, with one obviously unused. The photos on the mantel that stopped at a certain point, as if time had frozen. A pair of reading glasses on an end table that looked untouched, waiting for someone who would never need them again. It was a house holding its breath, maintaining routines around an empty space. "I'm sorry," Rachel said simply. Owen just nodded, leading her to the guest room. This was Lisa's office, he explained, opening the door to reveal a bright room with a desk, bookshelf, and a bed he'd moved in that morning. She was a teacher, brought work home constantly. "I've been meaning to. Well, it's just been storage mostly." Rachel stepped inside, noting the boxes stacked neatly in one corner, labeled in feminine handwriting, Lesson Plans 2021. Summer reading lists, art projects. "It's perfect," she said softly. "Thank you." Penny appeared in the doorway, Scout beside her. "This is Mommy's room," she announced matter-of-factly. "But Mommy's in heaven now, so she doesn't need it. I think she'd like you using it. She always liked helping people." Rachel sat carefully on the edge of the bed, her body still protesting movement. "Your mommy sounds like she was wonderful." Penny nodded solemnly. "She was the best mommy. She used to read to me every night, make pancakes shaped like animals. And she never got mad even when I was bad. Daddy tries to do those things now, but his pancakes just look like circles, and sometimes he cries when he thinks I'm sleeping." Owen's face flushed. "Penny, why don't you show Miss Rachel where the bathroom is?" But Penny had already climbed onto the bed beside Rachel, studying her with those 2 wise eyes children sometimes have. "Are you hiding from bad people?" Penny asked suddenly. "Is that why you can't go to your apartment?" Rachel glanced at Owen, who looked as surprised as she felt. "What makes you think that, sweetheart?" Rachel asked carefully. Penny shrugged. "Sheriff Henderson came by yesterday when Daddy was at work, and Mrs. Chen was watching me. He asked lots of questions about you and looked in Daddy's truck and seemed mad when he couldn't find anything. Mrs. Chen told him to leave unless he had a warrant. She watches lots of crime shows." Rachel's expression hardened slightly. "Sheriff Henderson was here?" Owen's jaw clenched. "First I'm hearing of it. Penny, why didn't you tell me?" The girl looked down, picking at a thread on the bedspread. "He said it was official business and not to bother you with it. But I didn't like how he made Scout growl." "Scout only growls at bad people." As if in agreement, Scout patted over and rested his head on Rachel's knee, his brown eyes steady and reassuring. Rachel stroked his fur absently, her mind clearly racing. "Your dog has good instincts," she said finally, "and so do you, Penny. If Sheriff Henderson comes by again, you tell your daddy right away, okay?" That evening, after Penny was asleep, Rachel and Owen sat at the kitchen table, steaming mugs of coffee between them. Scout lay at Rachel's feet, his presence a warm comfort. "Henderson's fishing," Rachel said quietly. "He knows I'm investigating something, but he doesn't know how much I know or what evidence I have." She paused, seeming to weigh her words. "I shouldn't involve you in this. You have Penny to think about." Owen leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Seems like we're already involved. Henderson made that clear at the hospital. And if Scout hadn't found you?" He let the implication hang. "Someone tried to kill me," Rachel said bluntly. "Ran me off the road in that storm. I managed to crash into a tree instead of going off the cliff, which probably saved my life. They came back to check. I played dead, and they left me there to freeze." Her hands tightened around her mug. "I've been investigating Henderson's department for 3 months. There's something rotten there, Owen. Something that goes deep. And now I'm in your house, putting you and Penny at risk." Owen was quiet for a moment, then stood and walked to a cabinet above the refrigerator. He pulled out a lockbox, opened it with a key from his keychain, and set a Glock 19 on the table. Lisa's father was a cop in Chicago. He taught her to shoot, taught her to be careful. After she died, I thought about getting rid of it, but he shrugged. Montana's a wild place, and now I'm glad I kept it. He met Rachel's eyes directly. You're not putting us at risk. Henderson did that when he decided to come to my house and interrogate my daughter. So you stay as long as you need, heal up, and figure out your next move. Scout and I will keep watch. Rachel looked at the gun, at Owen, at Scout, who had sat up and was watching them both with intelligent eyes. Why? She asked simply. You don't know me. Why take this risk? Owen was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. Because 2 years ago, I watched the woman I loved die by inches, and there wasn't a damn thing I could do to save her. Because every night I see Penny trying to be brave and grown up when she should just be a kid. Because for 2 years I've been going through the motions, existing but not living. He looked up at her. And then Scout dragged me into a blizzard, and I found you. Maybe it means something, maybe it doesn't. But I can help you. I couldn't save Lisa, but I can help you. And maybe that's enough reason. Morning came with deceptive peace, sunlight streaming through the kitchen windows as Owen flipped pancakes while Penny set the table with careful precision. Rachel emerged from the guest room, moving stiffly but steadier than the day before, Scout immediately rising from his bed by the fireplace to escort her to the table. Daddy makes good pancakes, but they're just circles, Penny informed her seriously. Mommy could make butterflies and bears and even a dragon once. Owen slid a plate in front of his daughter with a flourish. Circles are classic, architecturally sound. Dragons are structurally unstable breakfast foods. Rachel accepted her own plate with a grateful smile, the domestic normalcy of the moment almost enough to make her forget why she was here. Almost. She'd heard Owen moving around the house at 3 in the morning, checking windows, doors. Scout had spent the night in the hallway between the bedrooms, positioning himself where he could watch all approaches. They were all pretending things were normal. For Penny's sake, if nothing else. These are perfect circles, Rachel said, earning a grin from Owen. See? Our guest appreciates geometric precision in breakfast foods. The knock at the door shattered the moment like a rock through glass. 3 sharp raps, authoritative, demanding. Scout was on his feet instantly, a low growl building in his chest as he positioned himself between the door and the table. Owen's hand moved instinctively toward the kitchen drawer where he'd placed the Glock that morning, but Penny's presence stopped him. I'll get it, he said, his voice carefully level. Rachel stood, wobbling slightly. We'll all get it. Penny, stay behind me. The girl's eyes were wide, but she nodded, her small hand finding Scout's collar. Sheriff Henderson filled the doorframe, his uniform crisp despite the early hour, his expression professionally pleasant in a way that made Owen's skin crawl. Morning, Owen. Miss Brooks. Glad to see you're recovering. His eyes swept the interior of the house, cataloging, measuring. Mind if I come in? Few follow-up questions about the accident. It wasn't really a request. Owen stepped aside, knowing refusal would only escalate things. Henderson entered, his presence somehow making the spacious kitchen feel cramped. Scout's growling intensified until Rachel placed a gentle hand on his head. Coffee, Sheriff? Owen offered, playing the gracious host while his mind raced. Henderson shook his head, pulling out a small notebook. Detective Brooks, I'm hoping your memory's improved since we last spoke. The department's concerned about you. Your vehicle shows signs of impact beyond just the tree. Paint transfer suggests another vehicle was involved. Rachel sank into a kitchen chair, one hand pressed to her bandaged head. I'm sorry, Sheriff. It's still fuzzy. I remember the storm, losing control, then waking up here. She managed to look fragile, confused, nothing like the sharp-eyed Detective Owen had glimpsed yesterday. Henderson studied her for a long moment. Funny thing about that storm. Weather Service says it came out of nowhere, caught everyone by surprise. Makes me wonder what you were doing out in it. Your last log location was the office, said you were heading home. Your apartment's in the opposite direction from where Mr. Carter found you. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Rachel touched her head again, wincing. I don't know. Maybe I got turned around in the storm? Henderson's smile was sharp as winter ice. Maybe. Or maybe you were meeting someone. See, your phone records show a call to a block number an hour before the crash. I don't remember any call, Rachel said quietly. Penny had pressed herself against Owen's leg, sensing the danger in the room even if she didn't understand it. Henderson's gaze shifted to the child. Hey there, Penny. You were a big help yesterday, answering my questions. Your daddy must be proud of how grown up you are. Owen's hand found his daughter's shoulder. Penny was just finishing breakfast. Sweetheart, why don't you take your plate to your room? But Henderson was already crouching down to Penny's level, his smile warm and grandfatherly. I bet you were scared when your daddy brought Miss Rachel home. All that blood must have been frightening. Penny shook her head. There wasn't much blood, just on her coat. Daddy washed it, but it's still stained. Scout doesn't like you. The last part came out in a rush, as if she couldn't help it. Henderson's expression flickered. Is that so? Why do you think that is? Penny looked him directly in the eye with her mother's unwavering honesty. Because you pretend to be nice, but your eyes are mean. Mommy taught me about people like that. She said trust your gut and Scout's gut. The sheriff stood slowly, his mask slipping for just a moment to reveal something cold and dangerous underneath. Your mommy sounds like she was a smart woman. Shame she's not here to teach you more lessons. The threat in his tone was subtle but unmistakable. Owen stepped forward, putting himself between Henderson and his daughter. I think you've asked enough questions, Sheriff. Detective Brooks needs rest, and I need to get Penny ready for school. Henderson held his ground for a moment. The two men locked in silent confrontation. Scout had moved to Owen's side, his growl now a constant rumble. Of course, Henderson said finally, his professional mask sliding back into place. Detective Brooks, I'll need you to come by the station when you're feeling better. Tomorrow, let's say. Noon sharp. We'll need a formal statement, go through everything properly. He looked at Owen. You might want to come too, Mr. Carter. After all, you're our key witness. Wouldn't want any details to get confused. He moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Rachel, your apartment situation's been resolved. Amazing how quickly these things can be fixed when the department gets involved. You can move back any time. After the door closed behind him, the house seemed to exhale collectively. Penny wrapped her arms around Scout's neck, burying her face in his fur. I don't like him, Daddy. He makes my stomach feel sick. Owen knelt beside her, pulling her into a hug. You did perfect, baby. So brave. And you're right to trust Scout. Rachel stood carefully, her face pale but determined. He knows I'm lying about my memory. That comment about my apartment, that's a threat. He's telling me to leave or else. The noon meeting tomorrow isn't a request, Owen said grimly. He's going to separate us, interrogate us separately, look for cracks in the story. Rachel nodded. And if I don't show, he'll issue a warrant. If I do show, she trailed off, unwilling to voice the possibilities in front of Penny. Owen stood, his decision made. Then we don't give him that chance. Rachel, how quickly can you access whatever evidence you've gathered? We need to know what we're really dealing with here. Rachel glanced at Penny, then back at Owen. The documents in my coat lining are just the beginning. The real evidence is hidden, but I'll need help retrieving it. And once I do, once Henderson realizes what I have, there's no going back. Scout padded over to Rachel, sitting pressed against her leg in a gesture of solidarity. Penny looked up at her father with eyes too old for her years. Are we going to fight the bad guys, Daddy? Like in the movies? Owen smoothed his daughter's hair, his heart breaking a little at her acceptance of danger. We're going to protect each other, sweetheart. That's what families do. The word hung in the air. Unexpected, but somehow right. They weren't a family. Not really. But crisis had a way of forging bonds that normal life never could. Rachel's eyes met Owen's over Penny's head, and in them he saw the same recognition. Whatever came next, they were in it together. That night, after Penny was asleep with Scout standing guard at her bedside, Rachel and Owen sat at the kitchen table with documents spread between them like evidence of a crime. Rachel had retrieved them from her coat lining with hands that shook slightly, whether from her injuries or the weight of what she was revealing. Owen couldn't tell. 3 months ago, a state trooper named Marcus Webb came to me. She began, her voice low and urgent. He was scared, talking about shipments going through the department, drugs and weapons that would get logged as evidence then disappear. He had dates, routes, even photographs. She pushed a folder toward Owen. Inside were grainy photos of sheriff's department vehicles at remote locations, timestamp marked evidence logs showing discrepancies, and Marcus Webb's handwritten notes. Webb disappeared 2 weeks after he came to me. Official story is he took a job in Wyoming, but his wife says he never came home that night. His car was found at the bottom of Hungry Horse Reservoir last month. Sheriff's Department handled the investigation, ruled it an accident. Owen studied the documents, his contractor's mind automatically cataloging details, patterns. These locations, I know some of them. I've done repair work at the Brennan Ranch, the old Murphy warehouse. Always wondered why the Sheriff's Department needed so many storage facilities. They're waypoints, Rachel explained. Drugs come up from Mexico through a cartel connection, get redistributed here through legitimate businesses. The sheriff's department provides protection. Make sure the right trucks don't get searched. The right evidence disappears. Henderson's been building this network for years. She pulled out another photo, this one showing Henderson with a man Owen didn't recognize, both standing beside an unmarked truck. That's Anton Volkov. Runs a trucking company out of Kalispell. Completely legitimate on paper. But his routes match every single drug corridor we've tracked. Owen felt the weight of what she was telling him settle like lead in his stomach. How deep does this go? How many deputies? How many officials? Rachel's expression was grim. At least half the departments involved, maybe more. The mayor's office has to know something's happening. The DA hasn't prosecuted a major drug case in 3 years, despite numerous arrests. It's not just corruption, Owen. It's a complete takeover of local law enforcement. She met his eyes directly. And now they know I know. That crash wasn't about stopping an investigation. It was about stopping me from testifying to the federal grand jury next week. There's a grand jury? Owen leaned forward. So the feds know about this? Rachel nodded, then shook her head, the contradiction confusing until she explained. Yes and no. I've been feeding information to an FBI contact, building a federal case because I can't trust anyone local. But Henderson has connections everywhere. Someone leaked that I was the source. That's why they tried to kill me. She touched her bandaged ribs, gingerly. These wounds weren't all from the crash. Someone came to my apartment 2 nights before the storm. I fought them off, but I knew it was only a matter of time. I was trying to get to my FBI contact in Great Falls when they ran me off the road. Owen stood and paced to the window, looking out at the dark forest beyond. So, what's the plan? You can't go to that meeting tomorrow. Henderson's not looking to interrogate you. He's looking to finish what he started. When he turned back, Rachel was pulling out a phone he hadn't seen before, a burner from the look of it. I need to contact my handler. Let them know I'm alive. If the feds can get here before noon tomorrow, she stopped, her face paling as she looked at the screen. No signal. That's impossible. We're not that remote. Owen pulled out his own phone. Same result. His landline, when he checked it, was dead. They're jamming us, Rachel said quietly, or they've cut the lines. Either way, we're isolated. The reality of their situation crashed over them like a cold wave. They were alone, cut off, with a corrupt sheriff who knew exactly where they were. Owen moved to the window again, this time studying the darkness with different eyes. Would they come at night? Rachel joined him, her trained gaze scanning the tree line. Henderson's too smart for that. Too many variables, too much risk of witnesses. He'll wait until tomorrow, use the meeting as pretense to arrest me. Once I'm in custody. She didn't need to finish. Then we don't wait for tomorrow, Owen said. His mind shifting into the problem-solving mode that had gotten him through Lisa's death, through single fatherhood, through every crisis life had thrown at him. We leave tonight. Take Penny, take the evidence, get to Great Falls in your FBI contact. But Rachel was already shaking her head. They'll be watching the roads. And in my condition, if they catch us running, it confirms their suspicions. They could claim we were fleeing arrest, make us the criminals. She pressed her hand against her side where the worst of her injuries were. I can barely walk without pain. I wouldn't make it far if we had to run. Scout padded into the kitchen, his movement deliberate and focused. He went straight to Rachel, pressing his head against her hand, then moved to Owen, then to the doorway leading to Penny's room. His message was clear. The pack stays together, protects each other. Owen knelt beside the dog, understanding flooding through him. We're not running, we're going to fight. But we need help, and we need to be smart about it. He looked up at Rachel. You said Henderson has the local law locked down. But what about the state police? The ones not in his pocket? There's a Captain Sarah Mitchell in Helena, Rachel said slowly. She's the one who originally authorized my investigation, if I could reach her. She trailed off, looking at the dead phone in her hand. Owen stood, his expression determined. I know someone with a ham radio. Tom Garrett lives about 3 miles north. Lisa taught his daughter before. He's solid. Hates Henderson for some speeding ticket nonsense from years back. If I can get to him, we can get word out. Rachel grabbed his arm. It's too dangerous. If they're watching, then they're watching for cars leaving, not someone on foot through the forest. Owen moved to the closet, pulling out dark clothing, hiking boots. I know these woods, like my backyard. Scout and I can make it to Tom's and back in 2 hours. He looked at Rachel intently. Can you protect Penny if something happens while I'm gone? In answer, Rachel walked to the kitchen drawer and pulled out the Glock, checking the magazine with practiced efficiency despite her injuries. Lisa's father taught her well. She taught me a few things while we were talking yesterday. Penny showed me the photo albums. She managed a small smile. Your wife was a remarkable woman. Owen's throat tightened. She would have liked you. Would have done exactly what we're doing now. He pulled on his jacket, then knelt beside Scout. You need to stay here, boy. Protect them. But Scout was already moving toward the door, his intention clear. He would go with Owen or not at all. Rachel laughed softly, the sound surprising in the tension. He's as stubborn as you are. Take him. Penny and I will be fine. We'll barricade ourselves in her room if necessary. It's got one entrance, windows too high to access easily. Defensive position. Owen wanted to argue, but time was slipping away. Every minute they delayed was a minute closer to Henderson's deadline. He loaded a backpack with emergency supplies, including Lisa's second pistol from the bedroom safe. 2 hours, he promised. If I'm not back by then, Rachel cut him off. You will be. Scout won't let anything happen to you. And Owen? He paused at the door. Thank you. For believing me. For risking everything. I know what I'm asking of you. What this could cost you and Penny. You're not asking, Owen replied simply. I'm offering. Lisa always said the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. I've done nothing for 2 years while grief ate me alive. Maybe it's time to do something. He opened the door, Scout shooting through ahead of him into the darkness. As he stepped out into the cold night air, he heard Rachel's voice behind him, soft but clear. Be careful. Penny needs her father. And we need you too. The ham radio crackled to life in Tom Garrett's cluttered basement workshop, the older man's weathered hands steady on the controls despite the urgency of the situation. Owen stood behind him, muddy from the trek through the forest, Scout panting at his feet. They'd made it in 90 minutes, moving fast through familiar trails. But Owen's relief at successfully contacting Captain Mitchell had been short-lived. Her voice through the static was tense, frightened in a way that made Owen's blood run cold. Detective Brooks's handler at the FBI was found dead 3 days ago. Apparent suicide, but we know better. This thing, it's not just Henderson. We're looking at a multi-state operation. Federal agencies have been compromised. Tom and Owen exchanged glances as Mitchell continued. I'm mobilizing a state police unit, but it'll take us 6 hours to reach you, maybe more. There's a storm system moving in from Canada. And Owen, listen carefully. We've intercepted chatter suggesting Henderson knows exactly where Rachel is. He's planning something for Dawn, making it look like she attacked him when he came to arrest her. A justified shooting. The implications hung in the static-filled air. They had maybe 4 hours before Henderson came for them, and help was too far away. Can you get her to safety? Mitchell asked. Owen thought of Rachel's injuries, of Penny sleeping peacefully, with no idea of the danger closing in. She can barely walk, Captain. And I have an 8-year-old daughter. We can't run far or fast. There was a pause. Then Mitchell's voice came back harder, more determined. Then you fort up and survive until we get there. And Owen? Whatever evidence Rachel has, protect it with your life. This goes all the way to Washington. There are people very invested in making sure she never testifies. After signing off, Tom led Owen back upstairs, his face grim. I've got hunting rifles, ammunition. You take what you need. He pulled a lever-action Winchester from a gun safe, then a tactical shotgun. Lisa would understand. Hell, she'd probably be loading shells herself. The mention of his late wife from this unexpected source made Owen pause. You knew her well? Tom nodded. She came by sometimes, brought Penny to visit my horses. Smart woman. Tough as nails under all that teacher sweetness. She mentioned she was in the National Guard before you met? Owen's surprise must have shown because Tom chuckled darkly. Yeah, she didn't advertise it. Did 2 tours in Afghanistan before she decided teaching was her calling. She ever show you that footlocker in your attic? Owen shook his head, and Tom's expression grew serious. Might want to check it when you get home. Lisa was the type to prepare for worst-case scenarios. Just saying. He handed Owen the weapons and a box of ammunition. I'll drive you close as I dare, but not all the way. Don't want to tip them off if they're watching. 20 minutes later, Owen and Scout were moving through the forest again, the weapon's weight making the journey harder, but their presence reassuring. As they approached the house, Scout suddenly froze, his hackles rising. Owen dropped to a crouch, scanning the darkness. There, barely visible, a cigarette ember glowed near the road. Someone was watching the house. Owen's mind raced. If there was one, there were probably more. They'd have to circle wide, come in from the back. He touched Scout's head, pointed deeper into the woods. The dog understood immediately, leading them on a longer route that would bring them to the back of the property. The house was dark except for a single lamp in Penny's room, exactly as they'd planned. Owen could see Rachel's silhouette in the window, keeping watch. He gave a low whistle, their predetermined signal, and saw her tense, then relax as she recognized it. The back door opened silently, and Owen slipped inside with Scout. Rachel was there, the Glock in her hand, her face pale but determined. "There's someone watching the road," Owen whispered. "Maybe more." She nodded. "I know. I saw headlights about an hour ago, then nothing. They're waiting." Owen set down the weapons Tom had provided, then looked at Rachel. Tom Garrett said something about Lisa having a footlocker in the attic. Military gear, maybe. Rachel's eyes widened slightly. "Your wife was military?" When Owen nodded, she seemed to reassess something. "That explains a lot. The way this house is positioned, the sight lines, the defensive positions. She chose this place deliberately." Without another word, Owen headed for the attic stairs, Rachel following despite her obvious pain. The footlocker was exactly where Tom had said, covered in dust, but solid. Inside, Owen found things that made him realize how little he'd really known about his wife's past. Body armor, tactical gear, night vision goggles. And at the bottom, a journal. Rachel picked up the night vision, checking the batteries with practiced ease. "These are military grade. Your wife wasn't just prepared, she was expecting something." Owen opened the journal, Lisa's familiar handwriting making his heart ache. The entries were dated from just after her diagnosis. "If you're reading this, something's happened and you need to protect Penny," the first entry began. "I never told you about Afghanistan, about what I saw there, what I did. But I learned that evil doesn't always come from outside. Sometimes it grows in your own backyard. I've been watching Henderson for years. He tried to recruit me once, thought a former soldier might be useful. I declined, but I kept watching. The weapons in this locker aren't for hunting, my love. They're for the day someone like Henderson decides we know too much. Protect our daughter. Protect the innocent. That's all that matters now." Owen's hands shook as he read. Rachel placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "She knew. She was protecting you by not telling you." Owen looked up at her, tears he didn't try to hide running down his face. She was dying, and she was still trying to protect us. He stood, suddenly filled with a cold, determined fury. "Henderson doesn't know what he's walking into. Lisa prepared for this. We're going to use everything she left us." They worked quickly, Owen strapping on the body armor while Rachel positioned weapons at strategic points throughout the house. Scout seemed to understand the gravity of the situation, moving silently from window to window, watching. As Owen loaded the shotgun, his phone suddenly buzzed. Impossible. The lines were still jammed. He looked at the screen, and his blood froze. It was a text from an unknown number. "FBI Agent Mitchell, compromised. Trust no one. Henderson has federal backing. You're on your own. A friend." Rachel read it over his shoulder, her face going white. "If Mitchell's compromised, then the state police coming." Owen finished the thought. "Could be coming to help Henderson. Not us." They looked at each other, the full weight of their isolation crushing. They weren't just fighting a corrupt sheriff anymore. They were standing against a system, a network that reached into the highest levels of government. Rachel sank into a chair, her injuries and the hopelessness of their situation finally overwhelming her. "I'm sorry. I brought this to your door. You and Penny should run. Take Scout and go. I'll hold them off. Give you time." Number Penny's voice from the doorway made them both jump. She stood there in her pajamas, Lisa's old service pistol in her small hands, holding it properly like she'd been taught. "Mommy said we don't leave people behind. She said that's what makes us different from the bad guys." Owen rushed to take the gun from her, but Penny stepped back. "I know how to use it, Daddy. Mommy taught me. Just in case." The revelation that Lisa had been teaching their daughter to shoot, preparing her for this possibility, broke something in Owen. "How long have you been awake?" he asked gently. Penny's chin lifted, so like her mother it hurt. "Since you left, I heard everything. The bad sheriff wants to hurt Rachel because she knows he's evil. And we're going to stop him because that's what Mommy would do." She looked at Rachel with those two wise eyes. "You're family now." Scout decided, and Scout's never wrong about people. Dawn came like a threat, pale light creeping through the windows, revealing shapes in the forest that shouldn't be there. Owen counted at least 4 men positioned around the house. Probably more he couldn't see. They'd moved in during the last hour of darkness, professionally, quietly. If Scout hadn't alerted them with his low growls, they might not have known until it was too late. Rachel stood at the kitchen window, using Lisa's binoculars to scan the tree line. "They're not sheriff's deputies," she said quietly. "The way they move, their positioning, These are military contractors. Henderson called in professional help. The revelation chilled Owen more than the Montana morning. Contractors meant this went beyond local corruption. Meant someone with serious money and connections wanted Rachel dead badly enough to pay for it. He checked his phone again, hoping for some word from Captain Mitchell or anyone who might help, but there was nothing. They were alone, surrounded, with Penny in danger. His daughter sat at the kitchen table, eating cereal with forced normalcy, while Scout stayed pressed against her side. She'd refused to hide, insisting she could help, and Owen didn't have the heart to lock her in a room when these men might simply burn the house down. "Daddy, I need to tell you something." Penny's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly. "Yesterday at school, before Sheriff Henderson came here, Mrs. Henderson was there, the sheriff's wife. She was in the office talking to Principal Coleman, and she kept looking at me. Then I heard her say Rachel's name and something about making sure the message gets delivered." Owen and Rachel exchanged glances. The surveillance had been broader than they'd realized. They'd been watching Penny at school, using her as potential leverage. A phone rang, startling everyone. Not Owen's cell or Rachel's burner, but the landline that had been dead for hours. Owen picked it up cautiously. "Good morning, Mr. Carter." Henderson's voice was smooth, confident. "Beautiful sunrise, isn't it? I always loved this property. Lisa chose well. Strategic position, good sightlines, only 2 viable approach routes. Of course, that also means only 2 escape routes, and we're covering both." The threat was clear. They were trapped. "What do you want, Henderson?" Owen kept his voice level, despite the rage building in his chest. "Simple. Detective Brooks comes out, alone, and surrenders herself for arrest. She's wanted for questioning in the murder of federal agent David Kim, found dead 3 days ago. We have evidence placing her at the scene." Rachel's face went white. David Kim had been her FBI handler. "That's a lie, and you know it," Owen said. Henderson chuckled. "Truth is remarkably flexible when you control the narrative, Mr. Carter. Here's what's going to happen. Rachel comes out, or we come in. If we come in, well, dynamic entries are dangerous. Accidents happen, especially when there are children present. Tragic, really, when kids get caught in crossfire." The threat against Penny flipped a switch in Owen's mind. The fear transformed into something colder, more dangerous. "If anything happens to my daughter, Henderson, I promise you won't live long enough to enjoy whatever payoff you're getting for this." There was a pause. Then Henderson's voice came back harder. 30 minutes, Carter. Rachel walks out, or we come in. Your choice." The line went dead. Owen set the phone down carefully, his mind racing through options. They couldn't fight off professional contractors, couldn't run with Rachel injured and Penny vulnerable. But there was one option Henderson hadn't considered. "The mine," Owen said suddenly. Both Rachel and Penny looked at him in confusion. "The old Garrett mine. It's 2 miles north through the forest. Tom Garrett's family owns it, abandoned since the 60s. But Lisa and I explored it once. There are tunnels that go for miles, multiple exits. If we can get there," Rachel was already shaking her head. "I can't make 2 miles through the forest. Not fast enough. And they'll follow us." But Owen was moving now, pulling gear from the footlocker. "Not if they think we're still here." He pulled out something that made Rachel's eyes widen. Military-grade smoke grenades and flashbangs. "Lisa really was prepared for war," Rachel breathed. Owen nodded grimly. "We're going to give them a show. Make them think we're defending the house while we slip out through the basement coal chute. It leads to the old root cellar, hidden by the woodpile. From there we can make the forest." He looked at his daughter. "Penny, remember when we played Adventure Quest last summer? The secret tunnel?" His daughter nodded, her eyes bright with understanding. "But Scout can't fit through the coal chute," Penny said, real distress in her voice for the first time. Owen knelt beside her. "Scout's going to be our decoy. He's smart enough to make noise, move around, make them think we're still here. Then he'll follow us. He always finds us, remember?" It was a lie. Owen knew that once they left, Scout would likely die defending the empty house. But he'd make that sacrifice to save his daughter. Scout seemed to understand, pressing his head against Penny's hand one last time before padding to the front window, taking up position. Rachel was loading evidence into a waterproof bag, her movements efficient despite her pain. "Owen, if this goes wrong," he cut her off. "It won't. We're going to make it to the mine, lose them in the tunnels, and come out the other side where Tom will be waiting with his truck. I got a message to him through the ham radio while you were setting up the grenades." It was partially true. He'd tried to reach Tom but gotten no response. They'd be going in blind, hoping the old man would figure out where they'd gone. The basement was musty and cold. The coal chute barely wide enough for an adult. Owen went first, then helped Penny through, her small size an advantage for once. Rachel struggled, her injuries making every movement agony, but she gritted her teeth and pushed through. They emerged in the root cellar, covered in coal dust and cobwebs. Outside, they could hear vehicles moving, men talking. Henderson's 30 minutes were almost up. Owen triggered the first smoke grenade inside the house via the wire he'd rigged, then the second. Shouts erupted from the surrounding men. Scout began barking furiously inside, running from window to window as Owen had trained him in those desperate minutes before they descended to the basement. Flashbangs went off in sequence, the noise tremendous even from outside. Go, 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 Owen whispered urgently, leading them into the forest. Behind them, they could hear Henderson screaming orders. The sound of breaking glass as tear gas canisters were fired into the house. The contractors were moving in, exactly as Owen had hoped. By the time they realized the house was empty except for one brave dog, the Carters and Rachel would be deep in the forest. Penny stumbled, her shorter legs struggling with the underbrush. Without hesitation, Owen swept her up, carrying her despite the weight of the pack and weapons. Rachel pushed forward, using a walking stick Owen had cut for her face a mask of determination overriding pain. Behind them, the sounds of the assault on the house grew more distant. Then they heard it. Scout's bark, different now, a battle cry, then a gunshot. Then silence. Penny buried her face in Owen's shoulder, sobbing silently. Owen kept moving, his own tears freezing on his cheeks in the morning cold. The Garrett mine entrance yawned before them like a mouth full of broken teeth, wooden support beams weathered gray and dangerous looking. Owen set Penny down gently, his arms aching from carrying her the last mile when her legs had given out completely. Rachel leaned heavily against a boulder, her breathing labored, fresh blood seeping through her shirt, where one of her wounds had reopened. They'd been moving for 3 hours, doubling back twice when they'd heard helicopters overhead. The forest had provided cover, but they all knew it was temporary. Henderson's men would find their trail eventually. I don't like it here, Penny whispered, staring into the darkness of the mine. It feels wrong. Owen understood her fear. The mine did feel wrong, abandoned and forgotten, holding decades of darkness. But it was shelter, and more importantly, it was unexpected. Sometimes wrong places keep us safe from wrong people, he told her, pulling out the flashlights from his pack. Your mom and I came here once. There's a chamber about 200 feet in where miners used to eat lunch. It's dry, safe. We'll rest there while we figure out our next move. The tunnel walls pressed close, rough-hewn, rock-sweating moisture that made everything slick. Their flashlight beams carved through darkness that seemed to eat light. Penny walked between Owen and Rachel, her small hand gripping her father's tightly. Every sound echoed strangely, their footsteps multiplying until it sounded like an army moving through the mountain. Rachel stumbled, catching herself against the wall with a gasp of pain. I need a minute, she breathed, and Owen could see she was at the end of her endurance. The lunch chamber opened up after another 50 feet. A roughly circular room carved from living rock, with rusty mining equipment still scattered in corners. An old table, remarkably intact, sat against one wall beside what had once been supply shelves. Owen spread out sleeping bags from his emergency pack, helping Rachel lower herself onto one with infinite care. In the flashlight's harsh beam, her face was ghostly pale, shadows like bruises under her eyes. You need medical attention, he said quietly. She shook her head. What I need is to get this evidence to someone who can use it. Henderson won't stop now. We've embarrassed him, made him show his hand. He'll burn down the whole county to find us. Penny had found an old lantern, somehow still containing kerosene. Owen lit it, the warm, yellow glow pushing back the oppressive darkness slightly. His daughter sat close to the light, knees drawn up, looking smaller than her 8 years. Scout's dead, isn't he? She asked suddenly. Owen wanted to lie, to protect her from one more loss. But Lisa had always insisted on truth, even when it hurt. Probably, baby. But he saved us. He was brave right to the end. Penny nodded, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. Like Mommy. Brave to the end. Rachel pulled out the satellite phone she'd been saving, its battery nearly dead. One call, she said. Maybe 2 minutes of power. She dialed from memory, waited. The relief on her face when someone answered was palpable. Director Collins? It's Brooks. I'm alive but compromised. Henderson has federal contractors. Someone high up is. She listened, her expression growing increasingly grim. Yes, sir, I understand. No extraction possible. Another pause. The evidence is secure. If something happens to me, Owen Carter has everything. He's trustworthy. She met Owen's eyes as she said it. The phone died mid-conversation. Rachel set it down carefully, like placing a flower on a grave. The FBI director himself says the corruption goes to the Deputy Attorney General's office. They're conducting raids as we speak, but it'll be hours before they can secure things enough to extract us. We're to survive and protect the evidence at all costs. She laughed bitterly. Survive. Against military contractors with unlimited resources, while we're hiding in a mine with a wounded detective, a contractor, and an 8-year-old girl. You forgot something, Penny said quietly. They both looked at her. Mommy taught me about these mines. Her grandfather worked in them. She said they're all connected underground, like ant tunnels. This one connects to the Celestial Mine 3 miles north. That's on the Blackfoot Reservation. Sheriff Henderson can't follow us there without creating an incident with the tribal police. Owen stared at his daughter, amazed. How do you know that? Penny pulled out a small notebook from her pocket, Lisa's handwriting filling the pages. Mommy's adventure journal. She wrote down all the cool places she wanted to show me when I got older. The mine connections are mapped here. Hope, fragile but real, bloomed in Owen's chest. The Blackfoot Reservation had its own law enforcement, federal jurisdiction. Henderson wouldn't dare pursue them there openly. But 3 miles through abandoned mine tunnels, in the dark, with no guarantee the passages were even passable anymore. He looked at Rachel, saw the same calculation in her eyes. It's better than waiting here to die, she said simply. Owen studied Lisa's map in the lantern light. His wife had been thorough, noting landmarks, dangers, even air quality in different sections. At the bottom she'd written, for Penny's 16th birthday adventure. By then she'll be ready for real exploring. We rest for 2 hours, Owen decided. Eat something, bandage Rachel's wounds properly. Then we push through to the Celestial. He pulled out the first aid kit, kneeling beside Rachel. This is going to hurt. She nodded, pulling up her shirt to reveal the reopened wound. Owen worked quickly, efficiently, the battlefield medical training from Lisa's journal notes coming back to him. Rachel bit down on a leather glove to muffle her gasps. Penny watched with solemn eyes, then quietly began organizing their supplies, sorting them by importance like her mother had taught her. As Owen finished the bandaging, they heard it, the distant sound of barking. All three froze, hardly daring to breathe. The barking came again, closer. Scout? Penny whispered, but Owen was already moving, grabbing the shotgun. It could be Scout, or it could be Henderson's men using recorded barking to draw them out. The sound echoed through the mine tunnels, distorted and strange. Then they heard something else. A whining, pain-filled, but unmistakably real. Owen made a decision that went against every tactical instinct. Stay here. Guard Rachel. I'll be back. He moved through the tunnel quickly, following the sounds. At the mine entrance, silhouetted against the morning light, Scout stood on 3 legs, his left rear leg hanging useless, his golden coat matted with blood. But he was alive, tail wagging weakly when he saw Owen. Behind him, no pursuit yet. But Owen could hear helicopters in the distance. He scooped up the injured dog. Scout crying out once, then going quiet, trusting. They made it back to the chamber, where Penny fell on Scout with tears of joy, carefully examining his injuries with gentle hands. The leg's broken, Rachel said, running experienced hands over the dog. But clean. We can splint it. As they worked on Scout, Owen heard what he'd been dreading, voices echoing from the mine entrance. Henderson's men had found them. The tunnels. Now. They gathered everything, Owen carrying Scout while Penny led with Lisa's map and Rachel brought up the rear, pistol ready despite her weakness. Behind them, lights began to probe the darkness. The hunt had entered its final phase. The tunnel system was a maze of nightmares, passages branching and converging with no logic, some ending in cave-ins, others narrowing to crawl spaces that barely admitted Penny. They'd been underground for 6 hours, following Lisa's map by flashlight, the pursuing voices sometimes distant, sometimes terrifyingly close. Scout, splinted leg and all, had insisted on walking the last 2 hours, limping steadily forward with determination that put them all to shame. Rachel's condition had worsened, fever making her eyes bright, but she pushed on, knowing stopping meant death for all of them. Here, Penny whispered, pointing to a symbol on the map. Mommy marked this. Cache for emergencies. Owen searched the wall until he found it, a natural crevice concealed behind loose rocks. Inside, wrapped in waterproof bags, ammunition, water, protein bars, and something that made Owen's hands shake. Lisa's service weapon from Afghanistan, a military M4 carbine, perfectly maintained. A note attached, for when the wolves come, protect our baby. All my love, L. Owen checked the weapon with hands that remembered training he'd never received, muscle memory that belonged to the wife he'd thought he knew completely. The sounds behind them had changed, become more organized. Henderson's men had stopped calling out, stopped trying to intimidate. They were hunting now, methodically, professionally. Half a mile to the celestial exit, Rachel said, studying the map, but listen. They all heard it, the sound of machinery, grinding, mechanical. They're collapsing tunnels behind us, Owen realized, cutting off our retreat. It was then that Penny grabbed his arm, pointing to a side passage not on Lisa's map. Wind, she said simply. I feel wind from there. Owen felt it too. Fresh air, meaning another exit. But which way? Follow Lisa's map to the known exit? Or trust Penny's instincts toward the unknown? The machinery sounds grew louder, and dust began filling the tunnel from behind. The decision was made for them when the passage ahead suddenly filled with light. Tactical flashlights, at least 6, Henderson's men had circled around, were coming from both directions. The side passage, Owen decided, move! They plunged into the unmarked tunnel, the wind growing stronger, carrying the scent of pine and snow. The passage opened suddenly into a vast chamber. Morning light streaming through a ragged hole in the ceiling where the mountain had collapsed decades ago. Mining equipment lay scattered like ancient bones, but between them and the exit stood Sheriff Henderson and 8 men, all armed, all pointing weapons at them. Henderson looked haggard, his uniform dirty, but his eyes burned with fanatic determination. Did you really think you could run? This mountain is my territory. Every tunnel, every exit, he smiled coldly. Drop your weapons. It's over. Owen set down the M4 carefully, his mind racing. Rachel lowered her pistol. But Penny, small Penny whom everyone had overlooked, pulled something from her pocket. A flare gun from Lisa's emergency kit. Before anyone could react, she fired it straight up through the ceiling hole. The red flames shot into the morning sky, visible for miles. Mommy said always signal for help, she said calmly. Henderson's face contorted with rage. You little... But his words were cut off by the sound of helicopters. Not his, but others, marked with FBI insignia, appearing above the hole. Federal agents! Everyone freeze! The voice boomed from loudspeakers. Henderson's men looked up, confused, weapons wavering. In that moment of distraction, Scout launched himself despite his broken leg, 70 pounds of loyal fury, slamming into the nearest gunman. Owen dove for the M4 while Rachel rolled behind mining equipment. The chamber erupted in chaos. Owen fired controlled bursts, his wife's training flowing through him like inherited memory. Rachel, despite her wounds, placed shots with deadly accuracy. Penny had flattened herself behind an overturned ore cart, Scout dragging himself to guard her. Henderson was screaming orders, but his men were panicking. The FBI helicopters were lowering agents on ropes, and suddenly the hunters had become hunted. One contractor tried to grab Penny as a hostage, but Scout's jaws found his arm, crushing down with desperate strength. Owen put him down with a single shot. Through the chaos, he saw Henderson raising his weapon toward Rachel, exposed as she changed magazines. Time slowed. Owen turned, knowing he was too far away, the angle wrong. But Penny wasn't. The 8-year-old girl raised the pistol she'd hidden, the one Lisa had taught her to use, and fired. The shot took Henderson in the shoulder, spinning him around. His gun flew from his hand. He fell to his knees, staring in disbelief at the child who'd shot him. You little bitch, he gasped. Just like your mother. Penny kept the gun trained on him, steady as stone. My mother was a hero, she said clearly. You're just a bad man who's going to jail. The FBI agents had secured the chamber now, Henderson's surviving men surrendering. The senior agent approached Owen carefully, hands visible. Mr. Carter? I'm Agent Sullivan, Director Colin Santos. You're safe now. Rachel had collapsed, her body finally giving out after days of pushing past all limits. Owen knelt beside her while medics worked, her hand finding his. We did it, she whispered. The evidence is safe. Henderson's network is finished. Owen squeezed her hand gently. We did it together. Scout had dragged himself over, laying his head on Rachel's leg, tail wagging despite his injuries. Penny stood watching Henderson being arrested. No triumph on her young face, just sadness that it had come to this. As the medics loaded Rachel onto a stretcher, she pulled Owen close. Your wife, she saved us all. The preparation, the training she gave you without you knowing, teaching Penny. She knew something like this might happen. Owen nodded, throat too tight for words. Lisa had known somehow that evil would come for their family, and she'd made sure they were ready. As helicopters lifted them from the mountain, Owen held Penny close, Scout across their laps. Below, The mind that had sheltered them disappeared into distance. The federal courthouse in Helena buzzed with activity as prosecutors processed the largest corruption case in Montana history. 47 arrests in 3 days, including Sheriff Henderson, 6 deputies, 2 judges, and a web of business owners and politicians. Rachel directed operations from her hospital bed, her body healing but her mind sharp as ever. The evidence she'd protected had blown open not just Henderson's operation but a 7-state network trafficking drugs, weapons, and worse. Owen sat beside her, translating her notes while Penny did homework in the corner, Scout sleeping at her feet with his leg in a proper cast. The Deputy Attorney General is negotiating a plea deal, Agent Sullivan informed them, entering with a stack of files. 25 years minimum. He's giving up everyone, from cartel connections to congressional bribes. He looked at Owen with something approaching awe. Your wife was investigating this before she got sick. We found her reports in a safety deposit box, dated 2 years ago. She was building a case but stopped when her diagnosis came. She knew Henderson would come after your family if she proceeded while dying. The revelation shouldn't have surprised Owen anymore, but it did. Lisa had carried this burden silently, choosing her family's immediate safety over justice, at least temporarily. But she'd prepared them for the day justice would come calling. She always said the truth finds a way, Owen murmured. Rachel reached over, taking his hand. In the weeks since the mine, something had shifted between them, crisis-forged bonds deepening into something more. She was right, and she made sure you'd be ready when it did. The trials began 2 months later. Rachel testified for 3 straight days, composed and devastating, laying out the corruption in methodical detail. Owen testified about finding her, about Henderson's threats. But it was Penny's testimony that broke the case wide open. The 8-year-old girl, in her best dress with Scout beside her as an approved support animal, told the court about Sheriff Henderson threatening her, about watching him terrorize her father, about the moment she'd shot him to save Rachel's life. Her clear voice and steady gaze left several jurors in tears. Henderson was convicted on all counts: attempted murder, racketeering, drug trafficking, conspiracy, 300 years total, no possibility of parole. As they led him away, he turned to stare at Owen's family with pure hatred. But Owen felt no fear. Henderson was done, his network destroyed, his power broken. Justice had won, though the price had been nearly unbearable. That night, they held a quiet celebration at the house. Tom Garrett came by with his wife. Captain Mitchell visited with a commendation for Owen, and Agent Sullivan brought pizza. You know there's a reward, Sullivan mentioned. The federal government had a standing bounty on this network. $2 million, to be split between you and Detective Brooks. Owen nearly choked on his pizza. Rachel looked equally stunned. We didn't do it for money, Owen started. But Sullivan held up a hand. Which is exactly why you deserve it. Besides, from what I understand, there's a little girl here who's going to need a college fund, and a certain detective who's going to need extensive physical therapy. Penny, who'd been playing with Scout, looked up. Does this mean Rachel can stay? She doesn't have an apartment anymore because Sheriff Henderson burned it down when he couldn't find her. The room went quiet. It was true. Rachel had been staying with them throughout the trial, but they'd all carefully avoided discussing what would happen after. Rachel and Owen looked at each other, a conversation happening without words. If it's okay with your dad, Rachel said carefully, I'd like to stay, not just because of the apartment, but because I found something here I didn't know I was looking for. A family, Penny said matter-of-factly. You found a family. Scout already decided your pack. See how he sleeps between your room and mine? He's protecting both of us now. Owen stood, walking to the mantel where Lisa's photo sat among others. He touched it gently and could have sworn he felt approval. Warmth. Permission. Lisa would want us to be happy, he said quietly. She prepared us to survive. But I think she'd want more than survival. She'd want us to live, to love, to move forward. 6 months later, autumn had painted the Montana mountains in brilliant golds and reds. Rachel stood in what had been Lisa's garden, now expanded and thriving under her care. Her injuries had healed, leaving scars that she wore without shame, marks of survival and courage. Penny knelt beside her, planting bulbs for spring, Scout supervising from his favorite sunny spot. His leg had healed perfectly, though he'd developed a distinguished limp that somehow made him look even more noble. These are called hope flowers, Penny explained seriously, using the name Lisa had given to the crocuses. Mommy said they sleep all winter under the snow, then bloom when everything seems dead, like hope coming back. Rachel smoothed the girl's hair, a gesture that had become natural over the months. Your mom was pretty smart about metaphors. Penny nodded. She was smart about everything. She would have liked you. You're tough like her, but soft too, in the good places. Owen watched them from the porch, coffee in hand, marveling at how natural they looked together. The house no longer felt like it was holding its breath. It had exhaled, finally, accepting new love while honoring the old. Rachel had officially moved in 3 months ago, though she'd really never left after the trial. Her things mingled with theirs now, her books on the shelves, her coat on the hook that had waited empty for so long. Not replacing Lisa's presence, but adding to it, layers of love like sediment, building something new on solid foundation. Dad! Rachel! Come quick! Penny's excited voice broke his reverie. She was pointing to the tree line where a golden retriever had emerged. Smaller than Scout, younger. It approached cautiously. Clearly a stray, thin, but not aggressive. Scout rose, tail wagging, and walked over to investigate. The two dogs circled each other, sniffing. Then Scout did something remarkable. He play-bowed, something he hadn't done since Lisa died. The younger dog responded, and suddenly they were racing around the yard together. Can we keep her? Penny asked, though it was clearly already decided. The young dog had followed Scout to the porch, looking up at them with hopeful eyes. Rachel and Owen exchanged glances. Well, Rachel said, Scout could use a deputy, and every family needs a backup dog. The word family hung in the air, acknowledged and accepted. They were a family now, not conventional, built from tragedy and triumph, but stronger for it. That evening, as they sat for dinner, Penny insisted on setting 5 places. One for Mommy, she explained. She's still family too, just in a different way. It had become their tradition, acknowledging Lisa's continued presence in their lives, her preparation that had saved them, her love that had shaped them. The new dog, already named Hope by Penny, lay beside Scout under the table. Rachel had made Lisa's famous lasagna recipe, learned from the cookbook still marked with post-it notes. I got a call today, Rachel mentioned as they ate. The FBI wants me to head a new task force on corruption in rural law enforcement. Based here in Montana, Owen looked up, surprised. That's amazing. You'll take it? Rachel nodded. If it's okay with my family, it would mean some travel, but I'd be home most nights. And I'd have backup this time. Real backup, not just whatever brave civilians and their dogs I can find in blizzards. She smiled at Owen, the memory of their meeting no longer painful but part of their story. After dinner, they walked to the small cemetery on the hill behind the house where Lisa was buried. It was a family tradition now, visiting every Sunday, telling Lisa about their week. Penny ran ahead with both dogs, leaving Owen and Rachel walking slowly, hands linked. Do you think she knew? Rachel asked. When she was preparing everything, do you think Lisa knew it would lead to this? To us? Owen considered it. I think she knew I'd need someone strong enough to help me protect Penny. Someone who'd understand that loving again doesn't mean loving less. At Lisa's grave, Penny had already begun her weekly report. Hi, Mommy. Rachel helped me with my science project, and we got an A Scout's leg is all better. And we have a new dog named Hope. Dad smiles all the time now, real smiles, not the sad ones. Oh, and Rachel and Dad are getting married. They haven't told me yet, but I saw the ring in Dad's sock drawer. Owen and Rachel froze, looking at each other in shock. The proposal he'd been planning for weeks, apparently not as secret as he'd thought. Rachel laughed, the sound bright in the evening air. Well, Owen Carter, I guess you better ask me properly then. Owen dropped to one knee right there, in front of Lisa's grave, pulling out the ring. Rachel Brooks, you crashed into our lives in a blizzard and changed everything. You brought justice, hope, and love back to this family. Will you marry us? All of us? Even Scout and Hope? Before Rachel could answer, Penny threw her arms around them both. Say yes! Mommy would want you to say yes, I asked her, and she didn't say no. Yes, Rachel said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, to all of you. To this beautiful, complicated, brave family. Scout barked his approval while Hope danced around them. The setting sun painted the mountains gold. And for a moment, Owen could have sworn he felt Lisa's presence, warm and approving. They were healing, all of them, not by forgetting the past, but by building on it. Love, loss, and redemption woven together into something stronger than any of them alone. As they walked back to the house, Penny between them, dogs racing ahead, Rachel said quietly, Thank you for saving me that night. Owen squeezed her hand. Thank you for letting us save you. And for saving us right back. The house lights glowed warm in the gathering darkness, welcoming them home. Inside, Lisa's photo on the mantel seemed to smile a little wider, watching over the family she'd protected even in death. The family that had grown from tragedy into triumph, from loneliness into love.